Have you ever, stopped and thought about why we do the things we do? Like, why do we read? Why do we work? I mean, it seems pretty straightforward at first, right? But when you really start thinking about it, there's actually a lot more to it, a lot more depth. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're taking a deep dive into Akira Ikegami's book, Why We Read and Why We Work. And trust me, we found some seriously fascinating stuff in this book, things that'll really get you thinking.
Oh yeah, this isn't just some, abstract philosophical discussion either. Ikegami gets real. He talks about the things that keep us up at night, the anxieties about our future, our careers, the whole thing. He explores how everything's connected, like all the different jobs people do, how they all fit together. And he even gets into how things like AI and automation are changing the very nature of work. It's a super relatable book, very down to earth.
It really is.
Yeah.
So today, we're going to unpack some of the key ideas from the book. We'll touch on those career anxieties, the connection between different jobs, like how everything relies on everyone else. We'll talk about finding meaning and purpose in our work and what the future of work might look like with AI becoming more and more prevalent. And we'll also talk about something super important, how we communicate, how we navigate all these expectations that come with work and life in general. But first, let's start with something I think we can all relate to. That low-key anxiety we all have about the future, about our careers, and what it all means.
Yeah, Ikegami starts off by talking about those feelings, those late nights when you just can't sleep, wondering, am I on the right path? Am I making the right choices? Those deep questions about becoming a quote-unquote successful adult. He starts there with that uncertainty that I think so many of us feel and uses that as a starting point for a deeper dive into the nature of work. It's a really human way to start the conversation, acknowledging those doubts and fears. It's like he's saying, hey, it's okay to feel unsure. It's all part of the process.
Totally. It's like that feeling is a starting point, not a failure. And then he goes on to talk about this really powerful idea, the idea that work is about helping others, about connecting with the world around us.
Exactly. It's this really eye-opening concept that Ikegami puts forward. He says, our life is supported by the work of others. And when you think about it, it's so true. He uses these simple examples that really make you see it. Like, just think about taking a train. We hop on, hop off, no big deal. But that simple act requires a whole team of people, right? You've got the engineers who design the train and the tracks, the people who maintain everything, the driver, the station staff, this huge network of people working behind the scenes to make that one little thing happen.
Well, yeah, you never really think about it like that. And he also talks about food, right? Like from farm to table, all the people involved in growing, processing, transporting, cooking, serving. Everything we eat is a result of so many people's work.
Right. It's this incredible chain of people, each contributing their skills and time. And it's not just food either. Think about the clothes you're wearing, the electricity powering this very conversation. Everything we use and rely on every day, it's all thanks to the efforts of countless individuals. Ikegami uses this really vivid example. He talks about someone ordering a bowl of ramen. Right?
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, so you've got the cook in the kitchen, of course. But then you think about the farmers who grew the wheat for the noodles, the millers who processed it, the people who raised the pigs for the broth, the farmers who grew the vegetables, the truck drivers, even the person who made the bowl itself. All these people all over the world coming together to make that one bowl of ramen happen.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it like that. But then the book goes on to talk about something that's not so obvious. Like some jobs might not seem like they're directly helping others, but they're still absolutely essential.
Right, and this brings up a really important question. How do we measure the value of work that isn't directly helping someone? Like, take collecting taxes, for example. It might not feel like a super impactful job, but those taxes pay for all the things we rely on as a society. Schools, hospitals, police, firefighters. It's a crucial role, even if it's not as visible as, say, a doctor or a teacher.
That's a good point. And he even talks about things like TV production and advertising, which might seem even further removed from direct help.
Yeah, but it's all part of the larger economic system. Like he talks about free TV, how the advertising revenue supports the creation of the shows and provides jobs for all the people involved. So even those jobs that might not seem directly helpful, they're still contributing in important ways. It's all connected.
It all comes back to that web of connections. Now, the book also gets into something really personal, how individuals define meaningful work.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting. He talks about how different people find meaning in different things. Like for a toy maker, it might be about bringing joy to kids. For an architect, it might be about designing spaces that are functional and beautiful. For a caregiver, it might be about providing care and support to those in need.
And he gives so many different examples, like a train conductor ensuring people get where they need to be safely and on time, a vet caring for animals, a shopkeeper making their customers happy. It just shows that meaningful work is a very personal thing.
Exactly. Everyone has different motivations, different values. Some people find meaning in contributing to society on a large scale, while others find it in the smaller, everyday moments of their work. It's a really important reminder that there's no one-size-fits-all definition of meaningful work.
Definitely. Okay, now let's talk about the practical side of things. Because obviously, beyond purpose, we also need to earn a living. And the book gets into the nitty-gritty of household spending.
Yep, it does. He uses the example of Japan, breaking down the average monthly household expenses. Food, housing, transportation, all that stuff. He mentions a figure of around 280,000 yen per month, which is about 820,000 yen per year. It really grounds the conversation in the reality of why we work. We need to pay the bills.
And he points out how different factors can impact spending, too, like where you live and how long your commute is. Obviously, living in a big city is going to be more expensive than living in a rural area, and longer commutes mean more money spent on transportation.
And then he gets into these economic concepts like Engel's coefficient, which is the proportion of income spent on food. It's a way to measure a society's well-being, basically. The idea is that as economies develop, people spend less on food and more on other things. It's fascinating stuff. And then there's the Angel coefficient, which is the proportion of income spent on children.
Wow, I've never heard of those before. It really makes you think about how our priorities shift based on our circumstances and values. Speaking of which, the book also talks a lot about the relationship between work and life in general, like how much time and energy work actually consumes.
Right, because it's not just the hours we spend at our jobs, right? It's also the mental and emotional energy we invest, the time spent commuting, the stress that can spill over into our personal lives. It takes up a huge chunk of our lives, so finding a good balance is super important.
And the book stresses the negative consequences of not finding that balance, like overworking and neglecting our personal lives, relationships, and even our health.
Exactly. He introduces this idea of quality of life, or QOL, and emphasizes that work should contribute to our overall well-being, not detract from it. He gives examples of people who have found different ways to integrate their work and personal lives, showing that there's no one right way to achieve work-life balance. It's all about finding what works for you.
It's about finding that sweet spot.
Okay, so another interesting question the book explores is whether our hobbies can actually become careers.
Ah, the classic dilemma. You know, can we turn our passions into paychecks? Ikegami uses the example of someone who loves soccer. He talks about all the different career paths that passion could lead to, becoming a player, a coach, a referee, a sports journalist, even someone who designs soccer equipment. It's cool to think about all the possibilities.
Yeah, but the book also brings up the reality that sometimes turning a hobby into a job can change our relationship with it. Like the pressure to perform, deadlines, external expectations. It can take the fun out of something we used to love.
Right, it's important to be realistic about that. Sometimes it's better to keep our passions as hobbies and find work that utilizes our skills and strengths, even if it's not directly related to our passions. He talks about identifying our aptitudes, which are basically our natural talents and abilities. And he gives some great examples like being detail-oriented, being a good listener, being a natural leader, being adaptable. It's like, think about what you're good at, not just what you enjoy.
Totally. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about finding a job. The book acknowledges all the anxieties that come with that, especially for new grads.
Yeah, and he even mentions this unique thing in Japan called new graduates all hired at once. Basically, a lot of companies hire new grads all at the same time each year, which creates a lot of pressure for young people entering the workforce.
And besides traditional full-time jobs, he also talks about other options like contract work, dispatch work, freelancing. He talks about the pros and cons of each, highlighting the flexibility of some and the stability of others.
But throughout the discussion of job searching, he keeps coming back to the importance of communication skills. It's not just about having the technical skills for a job. It's also about being able to communicate effectively, both verbally and in writing.
So true. And this leads us to a really important part of the book, the changing landscape of work. Ikegami talks about how technology has changed the way we work, making things faster and easier. Like, just think about how much transportation and communication have changed in the last 100 years. It's crazy.
It's hard to imagine life without the internet now. And then he introduces this concept called Society 5.0 in Japan. It's basically a vision for a future where technology is seamlessly integrated into everything we do, like AI managing traffic, personalized healthcare based on our genes. Pretty wild stuff.
And AI is a big part of that, right? He explains what AI is, basically computer systems that can do things that normally require human intelligence. And he gives examples we see all the time now, like AI customer service chatbots and translation tools.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, but also a little scary, honestly. The book even talks about some jobs that might be replaced by AI in the future, like data entry clerks, accountants, factory workers.
But it's not all doom and gloom. He also talks about the skills that will be even more important in the age of AI, like creativity, complex communication, problem-solving skills, the things that AI can't replicate.
Right, the human element.
Yeah.
And in this whole discussion of the future of work, he also brings up diversity and inclusivity in the workplace.
Yeah, he talks about how important it is to move beyond stereotypes and create workplaces where everyone feels valued and respected. And then he brings us back to that fundamental question. How do we find happiness and purpose in our work?
And he makes this really insightful point. Success is not necessarily equal to happiness. It's so true because I think a lot of people chase after what they think success looks like, but then they achieve it and realize it doesn't actually make them happy.
Right. Happiness is subjective. It comes from within. And to illustrate that, he shares stories of people who find genuine joy in their work. It might be from helping others, from achieving goals, or simply from enjoying the day-to-day tasks of their job.
And he even outlines 5 things that contribute to what he calls exquisite happiness at work. A sense of accomplishment, feeling needed, making a positive impact, personal growth, and good relationships with colleagues.
It's not about grand achievements, but about those basic human needs and desires that can be fulfilled through our work. It's about aligning our work with our values.
And recognizing that our career paths aren't always straight lines, he talks about the possibility of changing careers and the importance of lifelong learning.
Especially in today's world where things are changing so fast, being adaptable and willing to learn new things is crucial. He talks about this idea of a 100-year life, where people might have multiple careers throughout their lives.
And that leads to the rise of side hustles and the need to constantly be learning and growing. It's a whole new way of thinking about work and life.
So to wrap up our deep dive into why we read and why we work, it seems like the book is really about finding our own path, defining success on our own terms, and embracing the ever-changing nature of work.
Absolutely. He encourages us to be ourselves, to not compare ourselves to others, and to focus on building strong relationships.
And to never stop learning, to always be open to new possibilities. He ends on a really positive note, reminding us that we all have the potential to grow and adapt, to find happiness and fulfillment in our work and in our lives.
So whether you're just starting out, thinking about a career change, or just curious about the deeper meaning of work, this book offers a lot of food for thought. It highlights the interconnectedness of everything, the importance of personal meaning, and the need to be flexible and adaptable in a world that's constantly evolving.
So as you go about your day, maybe take a moment to think about your own relationship with work and learning. What small step can you take today to bring more intention and purpose to those areas of your life? It's a question worth pondering.